Kentucky basketball has found a way to do it again. And one thing is extremely clear. This Wildcats team, it's got heart.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on in to Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and what do you even say after that 90-89 win that Kentucky just got over the Gonzaga Bulldogs? I am shocked, as many of you are, that Kentucky was able to pull this out after being down, I believe, 17 points at one point in this game. 16, 17 points. An incredible, top-notch college basketball game. The Cats find a way to win again. I am stunned. I believe as many of you are, the Cats were able to pull this off. We're going to break it down on tonight's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you're in the live chat, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. We are live on YouTube. If you're listening to this post recap, thank you so much for tuning in. Hey, if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. If you're listening literally wherever, let me know what you thought about the game. This one, I'm still trying to process through. Just to be honest with you guys, there's already over 200 of you guys in here in the live chat, which is just incredible. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Want to let you guys know that tonight's episode of Locked On Kentucky, an incredibly shocking performance from the Wildcats. This episode is brought to you, of course, by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. You could get $20 off to tickets to go see Louisville next Saturday. I'm sure Rupp Arena will be rocking for that one. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky basketball victors over the Gonzaga Bulldogs 90-89. How on earth did this happen? Are you kidding me, Mark Pope? Again, you go out of Rupp Arena. You go and play two of the best teams in the country. You have one of the worst first half performances that I have seen in the last couple of years. And yet you adjust, you come back, and you find a way to win at the very end. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, Mark Pope? One thing is for certain coming out of this game. Mark Pope's a good coach. I don't know what he tells those kids in the locker room. I don't know what he's got to say as far as adjustments. I don't know what that staff is cooking up. But it's pretty dang good what they're cooking up. I don't know what it is. But they found a way to win again. 364 of you in the live chat, which is crazy. Hey guys, if you in the live chat have anything you want to say, any questions, any comments, please let me know. I mean, I love doing these lives so that I can interact with you. If you're listening in the postcast YouTube, if you're in the comments there, leave me any questions. If you're listening on podcast at Locked On UK, by the way. The first half for Kentucky, I mean, we have to start there, right? First half for Kentucky, you shoot terribly. You cannot stop anything at the rim. Graham Ike is going ballistic on you. It's the exact same thing that happened against Duke. I mean, the exact same thing. And I'm sitting there. I'm on Twitter. I'm acting like the world's ending. I'm not necessarily on Twitter. I'm just, as far as sitting in this chair, I was acting like this world was ending. I was sad. I was down in the dumps. I was like, okay, at the very least, we've got several non-conference games here that we should win, right, coming out of this. I'd resolved myself to a loss at halftime. I'll tell you the difference between me and this team. They did not quit. They didn't give up. First half, you shot 33.3%, 29.4% from three. You got out-rebounded 16-25. You were, for all intents and purposes, down 16, down 50-34, dead in the water. It was over. It was done. Somebody said yes in the comments. The Kobe Bryant block was clean. I'm shocked they didn't call a foul. I mean, after we saw in the first half the way that they were calling this game, they sure tightened those whistles up in the second half, didn't they? Also, we'll address it here, and then we won't say anything about it again. The technical on Brandon Garrison was pathetic. That's just weak. That's just weak. We won't mention it again. Holy cow. First half, you are donezo. You are dead. That is 8 offensive rebounds for Gonzaga in the first half. You're dominating in the paint. You're up plus 10 in the paint. It should be over, right? You've seen Kentucky teams in the past whenever they've played in these like neutral site games or they played in these non-conference matchups against like Duke or Michigan State or whatever. They lie down and they give up. I'll tell you something about this team. They don't. This Kentucky team has heart. They've got heart. Man, they fight. And I love that. I absolutely love that. Mark Pope has found a way to string together 2 monumental wins at the beginning of his career. Just monumental victories against Duke, one of the most talented teams in the country, and then Gonzaga, one of the best teams in the country. You notice there's a difference there. Talented as far as like, okay, most of Duke's roster is going to have a look at the NBA draft. Most of them will get a serious look. This Gonzaga team is one of the most well-oiled machines. They're experienced. They're incredibly efficient on the offensive end of the floor, and they've been so good offensively in these non-conference games, right? They've been so good. And they were good tonight. They were good tonight. It just did not matter. It just didn't matter in the second half. I don't know what else to say. It didn't matter in the second half. I mean, I am just blown away by Kentucky's resolve. They just went out there and they found a way to win. Excuse me. They found a way to win despite shooting so poorly from 3 again. I mean, they shot well in the second half, or at least decently at one point. They were over 40% at one point, and then they struggled in the second half. But holy cow, you guys. Holy cow. Thank you guys so much for tuning in the live chat. Really appreciate it. Somebody in the comments says he's the first coach since Rupp to win both of his first 2 games against top 10 opponents. Let that sink in. Rupp is his Pope's first year. Ultimate Swan right after that says, y'all hit that like button. Hey, if you're watching the show right now, which is like 640 of you in the chat, thank you guys so much again for tuning in. If you've got any comments, I'll try and get to all of them here as we continue to break this down. Of course, we'll talk about individual performances. We'll talk about how good this team was. I am so proud of the resolve in the fight. Both there have been multiple comments already saying both of those things. The resolve of this team, the fight of this team, the adjustments in the second half. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. You were dead to rights, game over at the half. Any team that's not worth their salt packs it in. They lose that game by 14 plus. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. All right, real quick, before we continue to break this down, I do want to tell you guys about Game Time. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to go see these cats in person, which I know a lot of you do, and you want to get a really good deal on some tickets to go see maybe the Louisville game. I mean, I want to go to that Louisville game. And there's only one place you need to go and get your tickets, and that is over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. So if you want to get in Rupp, you want to get some great seats for that game, a massive showdown between some pretty competent Cardinals there in Louisville. You can use Game Time picks. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It's really, really awesome. They've got seat views, lowest price guarantee, all-in prices. It is literally the only place that I use to get tickets for just about anything. Concerts, sports, theater, literally anything in my area, I go to Game Time for it. And if you want to get tickets to the Louisville game, you can take your guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time by downloading the Game Time app. If you make an account, you can use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first order. It's a pretty sweet deal. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, continuing along here on Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys tuning in to the show tonight. So many of you in here. I really appreciate everybody coming into the chat, giving their thoughts, talking about Kentucky basketball's 90-89 win. Somebody says, what will we drop to in the polls? Hopefully it's not too far because you just beat the number 7 team in the country, which, by the way, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. It was on the road at a venue in Seattle. It was not a neutral site. This was a hostile environment. If you watch the broadcast, you could tell. If you were in person, you could tell. Somebody mentioned something about this in the comments, and I want to go ahead and get to it. Lamont Butler did not play in this game. Your starting point guard, who, in my opinion, is probably the best player on the team in terms of driving and finishing physically at the rim, which Kentucky needed more of in this game. It's what they needed more of against Clemson, and he had foul trouble. He didn't play. Kerr Carissa, who is actually pretty decent in this one, didn't play a chunk of the second half, and he didn't play the entirety of overtime. He had 4 assists to just 1 turnover. He hit a couple of threes in 27 minutes. I am just... I said it after the Clemson game, and I want to reiterate it here again. Kentucky has not played their best basketball. They have not reached their ceiling. They have not gotten to their peak. And yet, they have beaten 2 of the top 10 teams in the country. 2 of the best national championship contenders in the nation. One without a strong performance from Jackson Robinson. Another without their starting point guard and essentially their entire starting point rotation for the final third of this game. I don't go look at my Twitter. Don't do it. Don't go look at Locked On UK. Because I said some things about Jackson Robinson, some of which still are true. I said at half, I just looked at Robinson's numbers, and I'm like, okay, he's shooting like 40% from the floor. He's shooting 30% from 3. We needed more out of him. As the only player on this roster to have performed under Pope, we needed more out of Jackson Robinson. And it's been underwhelming so far this season. And in the second half, Jackson Robinson, including overtime, went in 17 minutes. He went 5 of 6 from the floor, 13 points. 2 rebounds, an assist, no turnovers, plus 15 in plus-minus box score. That's the type of player I've been looking for. That's the kid we've been looking for. Robinson's not going to have perfect games. It's not his play style. It's not how it works. But when he has halves like this, it reminds you why Kentucky brought him in. This is a valuable piece. This is a valuable piece for Kentucky. I'm going to try and get through some of the impressive performances here quickly. For the game, Jackson Robinson was solid. Give me, dude, if Andrew Carr was a Kit Kat bar, I'd say break me off another piece of that for the next game because he is a stud at power forward. I was talking with a friend earlier tonight about like the SEC draft that myself and Luke McClure did and about how I took Carr in that draft. And I was like, I'd take him again. You see the performance tonight, 19 points, 7 rebounds, 8 of 12 from the floor. He had two of his 7 rebounds were on the offensive glass. They were huge. 3 assists, 1 turnover in 33 minutes of play. Yeah, I'd draft that kid again. I'd absolutely draft that kid again. Biker Believer, Carr's a dog. Somebody else in the chat who doesn't have a name. These streets belong to Carr. You are absolutely right. That kid cooked. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on Twitter, I was like, okay, I was trying to put together like 3 players to watch tonight. One of them was Andrew Nimhard. One of them was Andrew Carr. I mean, those guys are going to be huge, right? And Carr led the team in scoring. He showed up. Him and Jackson Robinson. Otega Owe, also 13 points, 5 of 6 from the charity stripe. You know, Kentucky at one point was 15 of 15 from the line. They missed their last 3 free throw attempts. We won't talk about it. We won't talk about it. They were 1-4 in overtime. Hey, we won't talk about it. Otega played well. He actually finished second on the team in plus-minus for the game. Robinson actually finished first with plus 10, which is crazy, which is just absolutely insane. But Otega, Robinson, Carr in double figures. Amari Williams had 12 points and 3 rebounds, 0 turnovers, unfortunately 0 assists. Amari got worked in that first half, by the way, if we're going to just address that. He got worked in the first half by Graham Ike. Well, I'll just go ahead and pull up his stats, and we'll leave it at that. 28 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, no turnovers for Graham Ike. It's the second game in a row where Kentucky has just struggled. Second game in a row where Kentucky has just struggled against the opponent's big man. And yet they found a way. They absolutely found a way. Those were the big-time performers in this game. I'm proud that Carissa stepped up, and he didn't play bad. He played well, in my opinion. Just a couple of rushed shots. He was 2 of 5 from 3. I love to see the energy, though. Brandon freaking Garrison, 10 points off the bench, 9 rebounds. He got a tech that we wouldn't say. We said we wouldn't bring it up again. 10 points, 9 rebounds, a block. That's all we'll say. I want to dive a little bit into this game a little bit further, kind of talk about the overall stats. I want to just kind of read chat for a little bit as well. Just kind of soak this in. 670 of you in here. Guys, thank you so much. Hey, again, if you have not liked the video, I would greatly appreciate it if you did. If you've not subscribed to the YouTube channel, we talk about Kentucky basketball literally every single day here on this channel. Love talking to you guys. Love seeing what you guys have to say in the chat. We've got a Locked On Kentucky Discord. I'll try and update this live stream, post-live stream, with a link to that Discord in the description if you want to come talk Kentucky basketball. Somebody says in the chat, Gonzaga is better than Duke. Yeah, I think they're a better put-together team, and you went in Seattle and you freaking beat them. You found a way to beat them in that second half. We'll continue talking about this here in just a second. Before we do it, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. You can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, really appreciate you guys tuning in, everybody in the chat. Lance, all hanging out here with you. I really appreciate all the kind words in the chat. You guys are awesome. For those of you who I've seen that have left negative comments as well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Doesn't matter positive, negative. I just appreciate the fact that you guys watch. It's been an incredible ride. We're going on 3 years of this now, and you get to see games like this, and it really makes you appreciate, win or lose, makes you appreciate kind of what you're doing here, right? Okay. Some overall final stats. Kentucky shot 45% from the floor in this game. They made one more three-pointer, which might have honestly been the game. 15 of 18 from the line. Gonzaga was 17 of 24. Both these teams had less than 10 turnovers. Kentucky 7, Gonzaga 6. Kentucky found a way to win the rebounding battle, which, wow, can't believe they did that. They had 16 second chance points, which were huge. Gonzaga didn't capitalize on them. They just grabbed boards and then they missed shots. They missed catch and shoot threes, which was what I was complaining about Kentucky doing in the first half. Very similar in terms of bench points. I think the biggest thing for me in the second half was Kentucky being so relentless attacking the paint. I mean, I'll just pull this up here. Kentucky actually finished with more points in the paint after being down by 10 at the end of the first half. They shot 53.1% from the floor, and that included 2 of 7 from 3. So they were cooking in the paint. Didn't feel like we out-rebounded them. Yeah, it really didn't, because it was just so lopsided in that first half. Ultimate Swan, hey, thanks, Lance, for the live stream. Watched your predictions, but being a part of the chat definitely feels like community. Wishing the best for EG. Appreciate you guys. Super kind stuff. Arkansas beat Miami, lol. They did beat Miami, excuse me. Did you see the fact that they were down to UTSA, I think, at halftime earlier today? We won't talk a ton about Gonzaga or Arkansas until we get to them on February 1st. We won't do that. We're not obsessed with Cal and the Razorbacks, unlike some people online. Some Kentucky fans online. Anyway, Kentucky in the second half, 9 of 9 of free throws as well, clutching it out. Graham Ike, for as good as he was, I mean, he missed some crucial free throws down the stretch. This would have gone into a second overtime. It would have gone into a second overtime. But he did not clutch up, despite having an incredible 28-point performance. Pogo also points out, man, every single time I look over, I see your chat first. We were down by 18 at one point. Yeah, it's just insane. Absolutely insane. Largest lead, 18 points with 19-19 left to go in the second half, excuse me. Jake Evans says, after watching this game against Gonzaga, how do you feel about the upcoming games against Colgate and Louisville? Well, I would have felt a little nervous heading into that Louisville game, thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe the shooting slump continues. Maybe Kentucky's issues at the rim, they keep pushing. And on a recent episode of Locked on Kentucky, we talked about like Kentucky's major upcoming opponents, right? Like the 4 big ones. It was like Clemson, Gonzaga, Louisville, Ohio State. And we talked about how all of them in some way, shape, form, or another, they have the ability to attack the rim. And while they may not all finish effectively, they've got something down there that's worth looking at. Louisville arguably being the weakest. So, I mean, the Louisville game is the one that really does concern me the most. Colgate like toothpaste. Yeah, I was having that conversation earlier with Jevons, actually. But Louisville is the game that concerned me the most. And heading into that one now, it's like we're in Rupp. We're coming off a game like this. If we're able to capitalize against Colgate, who is 282nd right now in KenPom, so it should be a win. On paper, it should be a win. I'm going to go ahead and say that. You should feel pretty good. I mean, I feel pretty good. I was a little concerned, but man, the ability to adjust in the second half has been impressive. Someone says, this is as stunning of a victory as I've seen in quite a while. What a comeback. I mean, yeah, it's this in the Duke game, man. I mean, both games, I felt like I was trying to figure out how I talk about the team, expecting them to have the exact same performance in the second halves of play in both of these contests. They adjusted, and they found a way to win. I'm impressed. Big Poppy says this team has the it factor. Logan Blair says Locked On Crossover needs to be a return for big games in the future. I agree. As long as we have Locked On hosts that will talk about it, that will talk ball, I'm all for it as well. Shabazz says, I ain't gonna lie, I thought we were lost whenever the Zags went up by 18. That's what happened for 15 years of Cal. This is a new era, go Big Blue. And see, that I don't want to sit here, although it may be true, I don't want to sit here and continue to like dog Cal and be like, well, we lost this game every single time Cal was here. Because like it didn't feel like we would get down a ton often, But like also we didn't win these games with Cal. Like, you remember the Mississippi State game last year, if I'm not mistaken? No. Excuse me. I believe it was South Carolina, where we got down on the road at half, and then we just got bludgeoned. Like, it was disgusting. Yeah. This Kentucky team fights. This Kentucky team's got some heart, man. Another person says, I gave up in the first half. What was your favorite play of the game? Probably the block. I think it was Kobe's block, where they didn't call a foul, and I just kind of I remember leaning back in my chair and going and be like, oh, okay. So there's a pretty good chance that we could win this game if we get a stop in a bucket here. Shout out myself. Shout out Jevons again. What do you think, with this big win, what do you think about Kentucky's ceiling? I mean, hey, this was the exact same thing that I said after Duke. I'm gonna reiterate it here. This team can win a national championship. I know a lot of the Kentucky fan base, including myself, it's like, okay, Mark Pope is in win now mode. I mean, he's made that extremely clear in the preseason. He's like, we need to win now. We know we need to win now, and we're going to try every single possible way to win right now. And then at halftime at Gonzaga, it's like, oh, well, I don't think we're going to win right now. And then you won. You found a way to win. If the ceiling is national championship, Kentucky is definitely in that conversation, comfortably in that conversation. As are a number of teams in this conference, by the way, I want to note. So it's not all sunshine and daisies from here on out. I want you guys to know this could be tough. But the Wildcats have shown an incredible ability to just adjust and just win. It's the experience and it's the coaching, I think. The zone to man had Zags confused, kept them guessing. Yeah, you noticed at one point he switched to a 1-3-1. Mark Pope did. And that got them messed up in the second half. And then you come back to man, and then you go back to zone. It really did confuse them, and it slowed the game down a little bit, which was really interesting. That Kentucky won this essentially in a half-court game. I mean, minus the 2 buckets in overtime where Kentucky just got out and ran. I mean, like, the second half was, like, a lot of half-court stuff that Mark Pope just called and the team executed so well on. Again, shout out Andrew Carr. Shout out Jackson Robinson for hitting some clutch buckets. I mean, he had some clutch buckets. Paul says, I cried, and this team reminds me of the 1998 team. The comeback Cats, relentless play, down by 18, and somehow we won. Cats win, Cats win, Cats win. This is huge. Go BBN. Nathan says, what a joy to have a coach that actually makes changes and comes through in the second half, and players that want to win more than going pro. Someone else says, I was just glad that we made our free throws. That bodes well for tournament time. I agree. Someone said, or Shabazz says again, the defense was horrible in the first. They looked scared. What was the technical on Garrison? Again, I don't know. Pretty weak. When Garrison got the technical, I feel like he's a difference maker, says Kristen. Daniel says, this team definitely doesn't stop playing for 40 minutes. Luke says, hey, Lance, I think Kentucky needed that loss to Clemson to learn and be ready for Gonzaga. I mean, I think they needed that loss in the first half of the Zags game to wake up. And clearly, this Kentucky team has shown the ability to just wake up. Like, oh, okay, it's game time. Let's go. Kevin says, I remember a lot of the preseason predictions were undervaluing this team. Yes, they were. Great Kentuckian who's been watching this show for a very long time says, Lance, this was truly a historic win. Pope ties with Rupp for winning against 2 of their top 10 wins. Pope ties Rupp, for winning against 2 of their first top 10 wins. And tied in UK history with a win after being down by 16 at half. Mardi Gras miracle at LSU. It was also a crazy game as well. Luke also says, I think Graham was getting tired in the second half. Either that or he was just like second guessing himself on some of those free throws, man, because it was if he had executed, they probably could have won that game. Matthew also says our fan base has to chill 10 minutes in the game's lull. We need a social media ban until the game is over. Yeah, that's what I did at half. I got off of Twitter and I muted the broadcast. I sat here in dead silence for an hour and a half because I didn't want to listen to Jimmy Dykes. I didn't want to listen to whatever the play-by-play guy was saying. I didn't want to listen to the commercials. I just wanted to lock in, see what was happening, take notes, and just observe. And it was great. You should try that sometime. Christopher says, this game will be a boast of confidence and put fear in our opponents. Well, if they look at us and say, okay, they're able to find ways to gut ones out at the end of the game. Louisville, Ohio State, Florida, and Georgia. Again, those are the 4 that I'm really, really concerned about. Georgia, much better than I expected. Florida, higher than Kentucky right now on KenPom, ranked number 8, and they can get out in transition, and they can hurt you at the rim as well. But that game is in Rupp. Just wow. Carey says, might be the greatest comeback I've ever watched. Starting point guard out, down 18 at half. Gonzaga hasn't lost a game when leading by 10 or more in 174 games. Second string point guard to start the second half. And by the way, when Carissa went out, you know who you're playing at point? You're playing Jackson Robinson. I got to pull this up on KenPom. I have to pull this up on KenPom. You guys know how big of a deal I make out of KenPom and their chart rotations, like their most frequent lineups. Get a load of this. Do you know where Jackson Robinson primarily played at the end of the season for BYU last year. He didn't play the 1, he didn't play the 2, he didn't play the 3, he played the 4, 45% of his minutes. 45%. Most common lineup for them that they use 20% of the time had Robinson at the 4. He came and he played point and they freaking won. Yeah, okay, sure. Georgia has Samto Cyril, who's very good. They also have another like 5-star freshman or high-profile freshman that's also a really, really good download for them. Of course, I'll dive more into that as we get closer and closer to the game. Laura says, at least we got a win in Seattle, unlike the Final Four game in 1984 against Georgetown. Catching a dub. By the way, if you watch the preview episode of this game here on Locked On Kentucky, Locked On Zags host Andy Patton pointed out the fact that Gonzaga has never won in the building that they played in tonight. And they still haven't. What was the biggest change we made that sparked the comeback, in your opinion? We attacked the rim and we played zone. Those were the two. You attacked the rim in the second half. You finished unlike you did in the first half. You drew fouls, You played better rim defense, and you were just simply able to execute in spots that you weren't in the first half. You gutted it out, and you also played really well as far as like schematically on defense. I'm just reading through some of these chats. I was about to read a couple, but I don't know if I can. Jake says, if we hadn't had any injuries, what do you think the score would have been? We would have won in regulation, because I think Lamont really does mean that much to this team. And you look at what Andrew Nembhard did on the other end of the floor. 13 points, 10 assists. He's averaging 10, by the way, and just 1 turnover. I think Lamont probably is a significantly better matchup. You saw Nembhard throughout the entirety of the game. First half, he was probing like into the paint and inside the arc, and he was able to find different guys and just make plays. Second half, he was probing and he wasn't getting as much. I think Lamont shuts that crap down in the first half to an extent. And so I think Kentucky, they win the game in regulation. I'll reiterate it here. I thought this was going to be somewhere between a 2 and a 4-point victory for Kentucky. They end up winning by 1. I think Lamont is that valuable to this team defensively that I think that he ends up clutching that out. It's a more balanced first half performance, right? Okay, I can't read what some of you are saying in chat, but it's very funny. Great Kentuckian also says, Lance, I don't know if you mentioned it earlier, but Kerr passed the 1K point mark. I saw it on Twitter. I was gonna retweet it and just be like, congrats to Kerr. This is really awesome. For anybody that wants to trash Kerr, I know we've been extremely critical of him here on the show about his performances. If anyone wants to trash Kerr, I mean, he's a 1,000-point scorer. He's a veteran guy. He will find his way, I think, shooting the ball. And I think that tonight he played well enough. Let's see. What do you think Kentucky can improve on and learn from this game? Stop doing this to me in the first half. I mean, just don't do this to me in the fan base again emotionally. Like, don't get down and then come back. I mean, I don't know if I can take that again. I may have a heart attack. We may catch a live and I'm just gone on the floor. But yeah, that was tough. But I think that it's executing better in the first half on a serious note. And it is protecting the rim with Amari Williams and Brandon Garrison. I think that's going to be very important going forward, especially considering how many teams in the SEC are good at finishing and just have physical, like heavy big men, like 250 plus pounds, right? And then I think on top of that, I think that's something that's going to be really important is Kentucky and their shot selection, right? Like sometimes it just feels rushed. Kentucky scored 90 points and it felt like they could have scored 110, right? It's just shot selection, especially in the first half. Let's see. Why never double Ike? Jason Parker says, I love the zone and great change, but Cal loses the game 10 out of 10 times. I agree. So this is something that, again, we talked about in the preview episode. I don't understand why Kentucky doesn't double a ton. It's worked out twice against big men. Like they found a way in the second half. But yeah, I don't quite understand it either. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Patton also pointed out the fact that during his time at BYU and Utah Valley, whenever they played Gonzaga, Mark Pope didn't double almost hardly at all there. So maybe it's just the way that he likes to play, which, I mean, it's been pretty effective so far. How will the matchup be with Tennessee, Chaz Lanier? Zakai Ziegler, Felix, tough matchup. I think it will be a lights-out game between Brea and Lanier. Yeah, that's a game that I think Kentucky probably splits 1-1, just to be honest with you, just because of how good that Tennessee team is. I mean, they are good. That's a really, 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 really good team there. All right, a couple more questions here. Let's see. Kentucky just had to spot some points to make it look like Kentucky had to spot some points just to make it look like a game. That was all Lance. Unforgettables, the comeback Cats, and the blue-collar boys. Yeah, this feels like a blue-collar type of team. Man, Bob is a hater in the chat. That's funny. That's really funny. You guys are having fun. Okay. Oh, we'll take one more comment here from Great Kentucky. And again, I appreciate you listening. I appreciate everybody listening. Kentuckian has been here since the old days. Shout out him. Shout out Clint Darden. There are a couple other people that I'm forgetting that are like out of the country, but I appreciate you guys. Time will tell us, Great Kentuckian says, whether the Clemson game was Pope's bad coaching. We need to see more improvements on offense because the players act quite robotic, almost stagnate when the defense is physical. I agree. They need to find ways to be more physical, especially in the first half. And you need to see Kentucky start hot. You need to see them start hot at some point. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, podcast feed, wherever you are tuned in, subscribe to the show. It's going to be a super fun time. Of course, I'll be talking with you guys. I'll be talking on Twitter at LockedOnUK. It's a great, great time to be a Kentucky fan. Great time to be a Kentucky fan. Huge, almost improbable win. One of the best games I've ever seen in my life. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. Again, follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Oh, wrong hotkey, because I can't hit the right hotkeys in this house. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.